Hey, it's Drybear. The time has finally arrived. I've been asked many times to go over my key binding setup and just general key bindings for Dragonflight. I play a lot of MMOs and I found a way to switch between characters. Like I play all classes. I'm a huge altaholic. So I've developed a lot of things over the years to manage key binds so that I can switch seamlessly from class to class, spec to spec without getting too tripped up in the process. So today I'm going to go over key bindings that I have for my World of Warcraft, some tips and tricks for you to get your key bindings set up and ready to go for Dragonflight and beyond. So let's go. If you have any questions or comments for me, you'll find me live every day on twitch.tv/Drybear. See you there. All right, let's talk key bindings now. So there are many add-ons that you can use for key bindings. You can also use the default setup for key bindings here. There's many ways to do it. They added in extra edit modes and things that you can go in and do bars there. The one that I recommend, the one that I use is Bartender. I've been using it for a long time, but I like it a lot because it's very lightweight, it's very simple, and it's very easy to edit. So this replaces the core system. Keep in mind that when you use something like Bartender, it'll have its own key binding set up. So you want to use it on all your characters, and the key bindings will be different than the core game. But I find that Bartender is more useful. We're just going to be talking about key bindings and philosophy on that today, but just keep in mind that I do use Bartender for that. So what is important about key bindings? The core of key bindings and having good key bindings is you have a lot that you need to accomplish. Some abilities that you'll use, some actions that you take when you're playing an MMO are more immediate, more emergency. They need to happen right away, and some aren't. But depending on your class and spec and the game that you're playing, you do have a large number of abilities that you need to access all at once. So key bindings allow you, when it's done intelligently, to access everything you need to access when you need to access, and it's important that it's made for you. The key bindings I'm going to show you today are mine. They're comfortable for me based on my fingers and my hands and how I play, but it may be different for you. I've known people that use the arrow keys or that somehow can reach from shift all the way to 0, from thumb to pinky when they're in mid combat. So some people can do that, some people can't. So you have to kind of think about what works for you. I would say my strategy is more moderate. It does have some, I use 1 through 6. I don't use anything past 6 unless it's like something that is for UI only. It's not for combat. I can reach 6 comfortably. 7, I have to work for, and everything after that is like you're trading your fingers to do that. So the way that I set up my key bindings across all classes, and I use this in other MMOs as well, is I have set up a core system that has all my bindings set up ahead of time, right? So as you see here, when you look at these key bindings, you'll see that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 set up here, and then you choose those base key bindings and you add modifiers to them. That's the basic idea. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then I have modifiers for each of those buttons. Control 1, Control 2, Control 3, Control 4, Control 5, Shift 1, 2, 3, 4, Alt 1, 2, 3, 4. So you hold Alt and you press those buttons. So those modifiers increase the amount of buttons that you have. You can also get an MMO mouse, which has a bunch of buttons on the side. I have never gone down that road because I don't only play MMOs and I don't like MMO mice when I'm not playing an MMO, so I just haven't gone into that. So I just use my keyboard for everything, right? And then going up, you have Q, E, C, F, Z, and R. These are all accessible directly next to your WASD. Q, E, R, F, V, C, X, Z, T, G, B are all right next to it. So you have those plus the modifiers. Right, so E, Control E, Shift E. C, Control C, Shift C. F, Control F, Shift F. Z, Control Z, Shift Z. R, Control R, Shift R. You have all those moving up. You have Y, Control Y, Y on the far side over here, right? You have Y, Control Y, Shift Y. T, Control T, Shift T. So that's how you multiply your amount of keybinds, is get to the buttons that are there. The next thing that I recommend doing is just standardizing everything. The first way that I do that is I have a macro, not for my trinkets, but for the trinket slot itself. And the way you do that is quite simple. So you just have a macro, use this macro to create it. I can show you what this is right here. So this is the macro. Use 13. Your macro slots are 13 and 14. So use 13, use 14, and I bind those to B and to B4 or my mouse button. The reason that that's the only one that has a mouse button on it is because this is this started as my PvP trinket. So doing arenas and stuff, sometimes you need a PvP trinket unbelievably fast. I like just having that on my thumb on my mouse. You hit that button, boom, you're out of whatever CC you're in, and you can keep people alive, especially as a PvP healer, which I play the most of. It really helps you do that. But I have B is always this trinket, and B4, mouse 4, is always this trinket on all of my characters without exception. So then I know, and you can obviously swap this. So you'll look at the macros here. If I take these and I swap them, it's going to swap the buttons of what they were, right? These both just went on cooldown. So now whatever is in the first slot is B, whatever is in the second slot is going to be mouse 4. I do this across all characters. And that way, no matter what, those are my trinket buttons. And then no matter what trinkets I have, what character I have, they're all the same. So I think stuff like that really helps simplify the process of getting your keybinds to where you want them to be, because then it trains your brain. And that is the secret to playing multiple characters, is using muscle memory to create your keybinding setup, rather than having to remember special unique roles or rules for every single one of your characters. So now let's go into what that paradigm is for me and how I've set it up. So going down to the bottom button here, I always have my constant active abilities that I use on my regular, like the foundational items of my rotation on 1 through 6. So it's like my single target spell. I have help harms here for this. But like whatever, it's single target, if it's my damage, if it's casting, if it's melee attacks, whatever it is that is the core, like the low foundational elements of rotation for that character are always 1 through 6. Q, I always have as the ability that is like a big spender, right? So Star Surge is a spender. You build up your astral power and you spend it. You use it for putting up your spikes as Demon Hunter, or putting up a shield block on Prot Warrior. Spending in some way, like Rampage on Fury Warrior. Spending is on Q. Control Q I had as a universal keybind for all of my Shadowlands abilities, so I kept that. So if a class has a Shadowlands ability that I'm using, I will keep it on Control Q. Shift Q is always my big raid cooldown. So Tranquility, Rewind, all of those are all on the same button. If it's a big cooldown like summoning Demonic Tyrant or something like that, it's always on Shift Q. Shift E is always my defensive button. So I press Shift E when I'm in trouble. And again, this is why this is so important. And you have to kind of get through and figure out how to do it for each character, each class. But when I'm playing a character, and even if I'm like I'm not warmed up, or I'm not, playing my best, or I'm a little dazed, or I don't know, I'm falling asleep, whatever it is, haven't had enough coffee that day, I'm in trouble, I'm taking damage, I need to take less damage. Shift E, and I've set that up for every single class and every single spec in the entire game. If I'm in trouble, Shift E. Whatever the class is, that's the button we press. Shift C is my big burst of speed, if I need it, so, like Blazing Rush on Warlock, or for Druid, it's Stampeding Roar, if it's Tiger's Lust for Monk, things like that. Shift R is always my stealth for the classes that have stealth or like personal survivability. And then you have Control Z is always my mount. It's always been my mount. Shift Z is always my AoE. So what you do is that you just go through each of your characters, set up the key bindings this way, have them equal, and then manage them so that you always have things on the right button. So let's take an example here. So you've seen Druid a bunch. This is my Druid. Now let's compare that to the Monk. So you can see that Manatee is on the same exact button as Innervate, because they do the same thing. Shift C, which was Stampeding Roar, is Tiger's Lust, speed. F, which was travel form for Druid, is roll on Monk. So go fast, press F, right? Control C is still the same. Then I have what was Tranquility before is Chi Ji or Yu'lon, same thing. And that's the same thing for summoning either the Black Ox for Brewmaster, or summoning Zwen for Windwalker. Same exact button, same everything. X is my big transformation button. I press this when I do like Tree of Life, Revival, rewind, all those sort of things. You can see that my 2 trinkets are bound in the same exact spot. So if I want to do my trinkets, there we go. My racials are always Shift G, no matter what. Every single time I have all the racials that I have for all my characters, it's always Shift G. And one thing you'll notice as we jump through characters here real quick, I focus more on getting the function of the button to be consistent in my brain rather than specifically having things all look the nicest. So as we jump between characters, there's going to be gaps where there just isn't abilities there because there isn't an ability on that character that matches the function of that button. And we can compare it to my warrior. F is charge, movement ability. Your defensive shield wall. You press this, you get this extra little bit here. You have the same jump. There's your racial, big stuns on Shift X and Shift V. You have your buffs are always Alt 4. Whatever the buff is for that class, if they have one, it shows up. Monk does not, so there was nothing there. For Druid, it's Mark of the Wild. Then you have your Fort buff, you have Arcane Intellect. All of those, they're all in the same exact button. So you can see how there's gaps here where something doesn't fit. Something doesn't line up. Your Spender, Shield Block is there. You have your extra little bit. We could even switch over to like Fury, which has even less buttons than Prot. All the same buttons between the classes and specs. So everything here will be the same, but now there's gaps, right? So if I still want to do the same things when I'm playing Fury, they're all there. 1 through 6 are still the same buttons. I have my big cleave. Z is always my AoE if I have one. Shift Q is my big cooldown, recklessness. X is my transformation with Avatar. Gives you the Odin's Fury. And then I have my trinkets on the same buttons. And you have the extra bit. So again, if it doesn't fit the button, there's going to be gaps, but all the buttons have a purpose. You know, there's a place for everything and everything is in its place. Now, some classes you're going to have to make concessions with this paradigm just because, you know, classes like Shaman have a macro crisis, a button crisis. Like they just have so many things to put on bars that you have to create extra keybinds to keep up with all the nonsense, things like Poison Cleansing Totem, all that kind of stuff. So they just got so many buttons to press, but you can see, you know, it's very natural to go into it. So I recommend doing this. Absolutely. You want to make sure that you really commit to it. Because once you do, like now, when I go to Final Fantasy 14 or you know any other game that has a bunch of buttons, I can then set the same thing up, put the same thing in. Like, oh, I have a defensive. Look at that. Now my defensive's up. Oh, I need to go faster. Boom. Look at that. Now I go faster. Movement ability, ground target, your big cooldown, same button, right? So no matter what, it's always on a key that makes sense and something that works for you. So you have to find out what works for your fingers, for your setups. But this is kind of how I do it. This is how I set up my keys and how I play so many MMOs and play so many specs and classes without getting too lost in the sauce. So there you go. If you have any other questions or comments for me, you'll find me live every day on twitch.tv/Drybear. Comment down below other guides or other gameplay ideas you'd like to see me cover. Anything you have, questions you have for me. You're also welcome to ask me during live, but if you have anything, you can drop it here. I read all my YouTube comments. I'm not the best at always answering them, but I do read them. Yeah, just let me know. I hope this was helpful for you specifically and no one else. And I'll see you in the next one. If you enjoyed yourself today, leave a like down below. You can support me and my work on Patreon and view Patreon exclusive content. Link in the description. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.